We have a great panel today discussing opportunities in industry. And I think this is a really great opportunity because we have a really good chance to get a sense of what it is to be in academia and move out of it and have a successful career, hopefully utilizing some of the skills that you've been spending so much time developing. So I really want to thank everyone for being here. We have Jessica Carmen from Lonza Pharmaceuticals. We have Nick Durham from MetaView. We have Sarah Heminger from the Incentive Mentoring Program. We have Dan Johnston from DRI Biosciences, and Jason Hardbeck from the Dream Adventures. So I want to thank our panel for being here. I'm going to start off with some questions, and then if other questions get brought out, please raise your hand and ask them. And I hope we have a great session. So I kind of want to start, if we could go down the line, introduce yourself again, and sort of just give everyone a sense of where you started in academia, grad school, and how you moved out of it. How was the decision to move out of it, and why?
Okay, I'll start. I'm Jessica Carmen. Actually, I think my movement in industry is a little more interesting, so I'll say that I got my PhD here at Hopkins. I did a postdoc at NIH. I did a second one here, and then I went to Lonza. I started in the lab in R&D. After a year and a half, I was pulled into marketing by our head of marketing. And within 8 months, I was pulled into business development. So business development can be it's kind of a catch-all because it's a lot of different things. For me, it's mostly sales, actually, but it's also a lot of business strategy. It's both. So just so you can have a better understanding of what I do, you may know of Lonza for our bioscience products, our media, and our cells, but we're also a contract manager. We're a CMO, contract manufacturer, sorry. So biotech companies that have a product that they want to put into patients, they come to Lonza and we have the clean rooms to manufacture their products. So in Walkersville, where I work, we do cell therapy, so we're contract manufacturers for cell-based products. And so in my role, when biotech companies come to us, they talk to me, and I evaluate their product, and I vet them and evaluate them and decide whether or not we should take them in and manufacture their products. So relying heavily on my technical skills, but I'm also not in the lab anymore. I've been out of the lab for almost 2 years.
So again, Jason Hardbeck, currently a partner with Dream Adventures, which we can talk about a little bit maybe later. I actually am not, or have never been in academia other than my undergrad was in mechanical engineering at the Naval Academy, so I spent the next 5 years fulfilling that obligation. I was a nuclear engineer in the Navy. When I left, I actually ended up spending the majority of the next 25 years in startups, both in clean tech and most recently, the last 15 or so in software and IT. And we recently started an accelerator program in Baltimore, 5 of the 9 companies in this accelerator. It's a health IT focus. Have Hopkins DNA, shall we say, one of which is actually Mike Batista, so some of you may know Mike. He's alum slash peers who is currently going through that program. So, but I think we talked a little bit more about the potential to apply what you're learning in private industry and startups.
My name is Dan Johnston. I earned my PhD in the what is now the Bloomberg School of Public Health. It wasn't called that when I was there, but then I went and did a postdoc at Washington State University in the School of Molecular Biosciences. From there I went into Wyeth Pharmaceuticals, into their Women's Health Division, leading programs in the development of novel contraceptive techniques. In 2006, Wyeth pulled out of contraceptive research and I made a jump to the area known as translational medicine, supporting the women's health franchise in oncology. 2010, we were bought by Pfizer, and they laid off everybody at the site. At that time, I became vice president of pharmaceutical R&D for a company known as Delcat Systems, which did chemosaturation of liver-specific cancer treatment. I left there in October, and I am currently with a very small company called DRI Biosciences, where we're bringing forward a compound for autism. So I have Hopkins pedigree. I've been in big pharma, I've been in mid-sized specialty pharma, and now I'm actually down working with a very, very small company, and I've enjoyed that transition from big company to middle to now a very small company.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hillinger. I'm the co-founder and CEO PDO of the Incentive Mentoring Program. I did my PhD here at Hopkins, and while I was a graduate student, actually in my first year, I founded a nonprofit. At the time, I had absolutely no intention of doing this full time, and I was 1,000% on the academia track. So for me, it was kind of a diversion that was both from academia to industry, but it was also from, I used to build computational models of how the brain works, and now I run an 800-person organization. So it's been a lot of transition in multiple facets for me. Probably the biggest thing that influenced that decision was that I really realized, along the way, that for me to be happy, and that sounds like a very vague term, I needed to have three things intersect really clearly. One was what I'm really good at, with what I'm passionate about, and then what the world needs. And I think for me, I was super passionate about science and academia. I just think for me, my skill set enabled me to have a larger impact on what the world needs by kind of changing directions. That was really helpful in my decision making, is figuring out where, for me, things weighed up in all three of those categories.
Hey guys, my name is Nick Durham. I recently was hired by MedImmune. My first day is actually next Monday. So I can talk to you guys a lot about the process, but I can't tell you what it's like to work at MedImmune because I don't know yet. But with that said, MedImmune, the reason that I wanted to work there is because I came from the immunology program here. I graduated in 2013 from Chuck Drake's lab, and I did tumor immunotherapy, trying to get the immune system to target cancer. That happens to be a big field that MedImmune is working on. So for me, it worked out that I basically, tried to pursue them and ultimately got hired by them as they are AstraZeneca's biologics arm. So they are big pharma, medium pharma, I guess, combined. So I'd be happy to talk with any about any of that process or whatnot. That's what brought me here.
Thank you. Are there any immediate questions or anyone on the panel? If not, I think the next question that I think would be really helpful for everyone is, for those of you that decided to leave academia, were in it and decided, I want to pursue a job in industry, what motivated you to do that, and why, when did you start, and how did that process work? Accepting, I'm going to move outside of academia, and I'm going to start looking for a job. Anyone?
I can do it. You want to go? I mean, you can go down the line if you'd like.
Yeah, I guess so. I think I never really intended to stay in academia. Even when I initiated my PhD, it was never my vision to become a professor, although I did enjoy teaching people and mentoring. But I had my first child when I was a postdoc, and then I intentionally, planned for my second and realized we wouldn't be able to support both children with my postdoc salary. I also was applying for fellowships. I thought I really wanted to get into science policy. I applied for several of these policy fellowship programs, was told I was an excellent candidate, and didn't get any of them. And my advisor was writing me letters, and I helped him hire my replacement, and I had it all mapped out, and then suddenly I had 2 children and no job. I spent the entire time that my second one was a baby, on the computer, and really at one point was considering teaching at the local high school. It actually was bad. I was applying for technician positions. I was scrambling because if any of you have children, you have to pay for the daycare spot. You can't lose it. And I had to pull in some sort of an income soon, or we were going to have to pull them out, and I'd never be able to get a job. And I relied on my network, and I didn't even know that Lonza was in the state of Maryland, and I found out about it, and I went to their website, and there was a job that was called Jessica Carmen, you must apply for this. So I did, and actually, I should say that I overhauled my resume completely and then applied for it. Lonza was the first job I applied for with my brand new resume. Called me immediately, and that's how I got into it.
For me, when I was coming out of my postdoc, it was 2000. And I knew inherently that I was always going to be more comfortable in an industry environment. I came from what you might call a corporate household. My father was a CEO. Intuitively, it fit. And academics and the grant writing process, for me, not that I have anything against it, it didn't fit the way my mind worked. I kind of liked knowing who my boss was, who I had to appease, what the target was to achieve. So I knew all that. And at the same time, 2000, it was very different from now. Funding was as high, I think it's just about ever been. It was about 30%, 35%. Nobody was retiring from academics. Any professor that was 65 years old was going to go get another grant and go until he was 70, you know, and enjoy it. And industry, the pharma industry had exploded in the 90s, like never before. So I really got hired into pharma right as the bubble burst. And it burst everywhere. It burst in academics and the funding collapsed. It burst in pharma and the hiring dropped. So for me, the transition out was one that I was more comfortable with. I thought I'd be more comfortable with. During my postdoc, I had done a collaboration with Zymogenetics in Seattle, and I had seen some of that industry flavor, and I knew it was a good fit. So it was, for me, it was a combination of factors. It was what I figured I always wanted, and the economy at the time just suited the jump. So we may talk later, I guess, about how I applied or how I, my strategy. So I won't take up any time now talking about, application strategies. But that's how and why I made my jump.
Yeah, I mean, mine is kind of what I was getting at a little bit before. I went through the entire application process for a postdoc. Like, I literally was ready to sign on for the full, academic career. I think I just literally, once I had offers in academia and then was weighing those directly against running a startup essentially, it became really clear to me that specifically in science, I had published a lot as a graduate student. I left with 10 publications, so it wasn't that I was a horrible grad student, but when I really reflected on why I was able to be productive as a grad student, it was because wasn't because I was actually a great scientist, it was because I was a great administrator. I was able to collect data very quickly and very efficiently. I was able to manage lots of other people. I was able to recruit a lot of subjects. If I actually reflected on what I was good at, those skills I felt could be applied in a startup environment and be more effective and successful than I could in academia. Because I think there's other skills in academia that are really required to be successful that maybe I didn't have. So that really impacted my decision. Certainly money was not a factor because I think I would have made more as a postdoc initially than what I was doing. But all of the problem-solving skills, all of the thinking, that all applies, I think, in any sector that you go into. So.
For me, it was a little different than these guys. I thought about what I was good at. Well, I guess it's similar to what she just said. I thought what I was good at. And I was very good at goal-based science, being driven for something and being rewarded for it. And sometimes in academic science, it doesn't feel like there's as much goal. I mean, we get publications, but is there maybe a monetary reward for that? Not so much here. So for me, that was not, I guess, a huge drive, but a drive that made me want to do what I did somewhere else. And also, in terms of goals, to be able to make a product. In academia, your product is your paper, right? Or your product is your R01, should you successfully get it. But that product was not the only product that I wanted to make. I wanted to feel like something that I produced was going to go forward and actually, go forth into the market, into pharma. And so I figured that the best way to do that would be to work for BioPharma.
So I think what I want to go through next, and then we'll definitely open the floor to, or is there a question?
So I just had a question. I have completed a master's in molecular medicine, and I'm in a dilemma right now. I know for sure that I want to go in industry, but I'm not sure if I should go for my PhD first, get that advanced degree, and then go to industry, or use my 5 to 6 years to gather industry experience, and then pursue it. So what do you think would be a better approach?
So I'll just answer real quick. I mean, I don't have a ton of experience in pharma, but I can tell you when I interviewed. I interviewed with associate scientists, which are the master's track at MedImmune, and I interviewed with scientists. Only one associate scientist has made it to scientist 1, i.e. a master's level scientist made it to scientist 1. But they did. After about 10 years, they're very committed and they love MedImmune. So they can get there. But they did say, that's the top for me. There is no top end. Now, that doesn't mean that that's not right for us, but like, you know, if that's what you want, that's what you should do. But you have to ask yourself, you know, where do I want to go? If this is exactly where I want to go, I can get there now, you know, maybe as a master's student and not do a PhD. But understand, you're going to have to invest time somewhere, you know what I mean? Because, you know, all those people, even if you apply for the master's, you know it's going to ask for X amount of experience. The question is just when you want to invest that time, at least to me.
In pharma, there's a glass ceiling without a PhD, and you'll never have the autonomy that you may want with a master's. I'm not against it, I'm saying, but if you want to run your lab, go after your vision, call your shots, you likely won't find that in big pharma. And the smaller the company gets, the more your opportunities will go up with, you know, in the position you're in with a master's. Okay. I worked my last company, I'll say it, the smartest person I ever worked with in my life never went to college. I've never seen anything like it in my life, ever. What this man could do. And he never would have that chance in big pharma. Never. You know?
Can you comment on whether or not a postdoc is necessary or helpful to get to this type of position?
So I have an opinion on this. So having done two postdocs, yes and no. Mostly no, but you have to. I think that in reality, the postdoc experience does not grant you much that's going to help you in industry. However, when you apply, everybody else has one, so you're not competitive, so you have to. So I would say use it to your advantage, and one of the things that is ideal is to jump fields. Somebody, a mentor told me that, you know, the whole point of the PhD is the whole process of thinking critically about a project and executing it and troubleshooting it. We'll do it again with something else. If you stay in the same field, you haven't really given yourself that opportunity to really flex your skills. And I actually used that in my interview when I was asked, you don't have any industry experience, how do I know that you're going to be good? And I said, well, I completely shifted fields when I went into my postdoc, and I did that beautifully. I don't see why I wouldn't be able to do this.
Can I jump on that? That's one of the things driving down here today I thought I wanted to make. And it's similar to what you said, and that is when I did my interview at Wyeth, it was basically, you know, why should we hire you? And it wasn't that I had jumped fields, but I had started for my PhD project over in public health, a program that did not exist. There was nothing. There was no reagents. There was nothing. It was an idea. And by the time we were done, we had the publications, we had the R01. Then I went to my postdoc and I did exactly the same thing, a project that didn't exist. And we started it up, we got it going, we got papers, the guy got an R01 as I was going out the door. And that's an incredibly powerful thing to bring to your job interview, to say, it's not like you came in and somebody said, here's a project that the last PhD finished, hop on it, pound out the papers that she couldn't quite get to, and head on your way. It's you saying, this didn't exist. And that, I think it dovetails with what you said. Show some initiative to change gears or to start something that from scratch that doesn't exist. So when I interviewed for my last job, they said, well, what did you do? I said, well, we had to make a new medical device drug combination product, and in 16 months we took it from start to approval in Europe. And that's starting from, not nothing in this case, but you know, making something in 16 months and having it approved and finish it, get your papers out. To say, well, I did this and I started this neat project. Well, where are your papers? You know that it's done, it's finished. Start it, finish it.
So I don't have a postdoc, and I got hired as a scientist, so I don't know that it's absolutely required. But I will say, my job is what I did before, right? So to bounce off these guys, you know what I mean? Like, which is very different. You know, these guys probably brought me on very much for what I did. You know, so maybe the reason that I'm okay and that it's very different than their experiences, where these guys were like, this guy has the skills that we need now, and we need it now. And so they brought me on to do it now. But I do want to say, you do have to answer that question. They're going to ask you over and over, why industry? Why are you going to be successful here? I mean, I had 13 people in 7 hours, right? And every single one of them asked me that question. Your answer better be good, right? I mean, it better be, you know, a good answer.
With examples.
Yeah,
with examples.
With examples, and you got to stay on message. Like, you know what I mean, in terms of being consistent. Because they're going to talk after, you know, you leave. 5 of them will get together, and they're going to say, hey, what did he say? You know, why is this going to be good? And it should be, it sounds bad, like on message, sounds like you're going to lie to them. It's not lying, it's just making sure that you know what you want. Because they don't want to hire somebody that doesn't know what they want, right? They want to know that you want to be there every day, and that you're ready to work for it.
So you said that you rewrote your resume, and then as soon as you submitted it, you got your job. So what was important, or what do you think was important in selling yourself better for industry?
Yeah, so I had this CV that was like, I don't know, like 5 or 7 pages, and it was awful. It was, and I knew it, and I didn't have the desire or the energy to change it, and I had the opinion, everything I've done is awesome, and if people can't see it when they read it, that's their loss. Well, then I was applying for high school positions and realized maybe it was my loss. So, you know, I did, and so I totally overhauled it. It wasn't no longer a CV, it was now a resume. It was shorter, and it contained more information. You know, I really had some information that I was a project leader. That meant organizing meetings, calling people together, writing the grant, you know, what, like, you know, I was able to put that sort of information, and I have a list of publications on the back. I mean, it took an entire weekend, like, dedicated doing it. It was a lot of effort, and it's not easy. You're selling yourself. It's a really painful process to sit there and think, what am I good at? And it makes you squirm, and you're not comfortable about it. And you know, and I now realize that I was never going to go anywhere until I just sat down and did it. It's not fun, but I think you have to do it.
I should actually, since I'm like the token non-PhD in the room, but I've had the opportunity to work with many and mentor, I think Jessica makes an excellent point. We all know you're very smart. That's not the point. It's what can you do? You know, what are you capable of doing? You know, I kind of operate at the earliest stages of company formation. So one of the challenges of being a PhD, being so specialized is, you know, there's not luxury for a lot of time or, you know, kind of this, you know, this dedicated resource for X number of months or years. It's about getting stuff done now that, you know, that changes on a daily basis. And one of the biggest challenges I've seen for our folks coming out of academia is that it's really difficult to deal with the fact that things change constantly, and that it's not something that is in your control. And so dealing with that is really challenging for somebody who's used to having a track, right? What I'm hearing is it's actually when you're able to demonstrate that you know, your flexibility and ability to apply what you've learned in new situations is what's most important.
Okay, I just want to add one thing, that everything that they said was true. No. And sorry, I didn't mean to wait like that. That's not good. Like, everything that they said, I totally agree with it. And I started off exactly the same way. I sent my CV out thinking I'm awesome, and it does not work. And I was very lucky. I applied for some jobs at Wanza, and one of the guys there was like, man, this is horrible. You can't do this. Like, you're never going to get a job. I don't know if you're an engineer. I don't know if you're a scientist. I don't know what you're doing.
I know who you talked to.
Yeah. He was like, he's so nice. I mean, you know, if you can find someone in industry to help you make whatever you're doing industry-based, please do it. Like, it will help. I mean, my boss, Chuck Drake, he's a great guy. He's the world's greatest guy. He in no way can help me make a resume for industry. He knows something about it, right? He will make my CV look great. He'll help me do that, but he doesn't know about the other thing. So find help where you can get it, and when you do it, it'll reward yourself.
One of the best pieces of advice I got, because I've been laid off 3 times, and that is, you know, there's another point I may want to make later on that too, but one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was look at your resume every morning. And it does 2 things. One is you get you get a new look at it every day. One is it reminds you of what you've done. It reminds you of what your skill sets are. And I find it helps me to look at my resume. It did when I was out every morning as I got my day started. Not only did I find typos that seem to keep showing up, but it was kind of, oh yeah, I mean, I did do this accomplishment. And when you have now a 14-year career after my postdoc, sometimes there's stretches in there where you said, oh yeah, you know, I did do that. And that was a nice piece. And when you go interview and when you talk to people, when you get your 30-second elevator piece, you know, you're ready. You have those bullets ready to go. And depending on who you're talking to, you want to use different bullets. So know your resume. Know your resume really well. And look at it when you're thinking about applying for a job. Don't just say, oh, I like this job. Let me fire this file out of my hard drive. Because that file on your hard drive may not be tailored and bent and twisted exactly the way that it should be. And that's, I think, what you're saying. That's, yeah. And that's what...
I'd like to throw in a shameless plug here for a moment, particularly since I have to run out at the end and I don't want to miss anybody. towards the end of April, the third week in April, we're bringing in human workflows to do a workshop, and they have a program that they have called PhD, and it's all about how to craft your skills that you have now as scientists that you might not even know you have, to make them attractive to industry employers. So you'll be seeing that in our newsletter. Watch for it.
And your resume needs to be unique to every job you apply to, every single job. And I know you think like, hey, these are generic skills. Like, some of them will be, and you'll get to keep them, but they'll be moved around or whatever. But everything should be unique to the job you're applying to.
What do you think makes industry, I mean, we all hear about industry, it's like a big black box, honestly, to a degree. Like, what do you think makes it so different than academia, like on a day-to-day basis?
Profit motive.
What?
I mean, the profit motive, right? And that's not a dirty word, right? But that's, you know, the whole reason for a company to exist is to make a profit, right? And that's, you know, I think we are in an age where we don't have the luxury anymore of having not to worry about that unless you're in certain aspects of government. I mean, you know, that's at least the perception from outside in too. Education is sometimes viewed that way, certainly higher education. So that's something that you have to be very comfortable with, and also be able to, you don't have to be an MBA to you know, to be successful in business. Matter of fact, sometimes that's actually a negative, but you have to understand the reason. And I think to what Nick had said too, in terms of understanding the specific opportunity or company, what they're, you know, I would fully expect somebody who's coming to interview to understand the different lines of business, customers, you know, markets that we serve, basically big picture kinds of things.
I like what you said, you know, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, you realize the company is profitable when the technology is getting to people and patients or researchers or whoever the target market is. And that's actually very fulfilling. Yes, the company's making money, and that's great, and you know, I feel good about that because I actually really believe in what my company is doing, but I also really feel good knowing that we're serving patients.
I can just maybe add to that. So I briefly worked for a year for Medtronic in between undergrad and grad school. And I had the best boss in the entire world. They had a gym. Like, I got to do aerobics at lunchtime. I mean, like, honestly, it was a wonderful company to work for. Like, I could not say enough amazing things about working for that company. However, I wanted to blow my brains out because what I was doing was I was building prosthetics for the middle ear. And it kind of, to that part of, like, how am I impacting the world question, that third part, like, I just felt like, okay, am I really connected to something that I feel deeply purposeful about? And for me personally, I did. Maybe for someone else, that is exactly what they were born to do, was like build prosthetics. Just for me, that wasn't it. And I think it goes back to the bottom line. Like, it's in academia, I think there's even a financial component. It's not as much as industry. But then for me, going way off the cliff really had to do with, like, the bottom line is, it's like a double bottom line. It's, are you actually impacting people's lives, and can you make payroll? So there's at least innately built into how you measure success something other than money. Not that there's anything wrong with it being solely money, but there is a difference in the culture of an organization where you have a double bottom line versus if the goal is to, like, make a shareholder happy.
I should clarify that too. That's not the reason you go to industry, to be honest. I mean, I have lots of friends who make a lot of money and are definitely unhappy with their lives. I mean, if you're not able to be passionate about what you do, why bother, right? So, you know, sometimes there's a necessity, a reality, but again, in every instance, I think you ultimately will be most successful when you really enjoy what you do, because then it's not work anymore. And that's certainly what, you know, especially if you do a startup. I tell people this all the time. You don't start up a business because you want to be rich. That's not the reason to do it. It'll never happen that way. So, but you know, sometimes you go up.
When I heard that question, the first thing I thought of was the amount and the coordination of resources. Unbelievable. When you're at a big pharma that's working well, and I've been in big pharma that works well, and I've been in big pharma that's complete chaos. But when you're in big pharma that's working well, the amount of resources, the armamentarium that they have is extraordinary, and their ability to coordinate those resources to work together. You have to work together. The guy, it was Mike Gold that was on the last panel, he said you have to be ready to collaborate. And if you don't collaborate, if you try to be an island to yourself, you will not last, because your job is to make this big machine work. And when it works well, and those resources are as powerful as they are, it's extraordinary. So, and then the other comment you heard, I think, from some other people that I look at it is, you don't ever take a job where your heart and your head are not going in the same direction. Right? It's like going to get a PhD. If you go to get a PhD because you want to hear somebody call you doctor for the rest of your life, you're probably not going to make it. It's too long, it's too hard, it's not enough money. You do it because you love it. And I think that's
Absolutely.
I think sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to figure out what you love. So like, I don't know about everyone else, but like, I feel like that's not, maybe for some they knew when they were 6 years old, like what they wanted to be. That just wasn't me. And so I think it's actually okay to like explore different options, like try different things, and it like might like this thing, might not like that thing, but I don't know. I have a.
I can see that. Yeah. When you see it, though, do it. You know?
Yeah, you'll know when it happens. It's like when you know who you're gonna marry. Like it really is. Like you just like it's a gut thing. You know, there's some risk involved. You know, there's moments where it seems tenuous, but you know that this is what you're gonna do. Yeah, but I think that takes some time to figure out for most people, at least the grad students I've worked with. And myself.
The only thing I'll add to that is that I haven't started yet, but every single company that I've interviewed with, including Lonza, I asked them, I think this is a good question, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. What are the types of things that make somebody successful here, and what are some of the things that are characteristics of people that fail here? And every one of those companies, every one of them has said, people that will not collaborate outside of their group fail. If you come to a company and think you can be an island, okay, maybe you've done that here at grad school, maybe you had a project and you bunkered down and you just went after your project and you got whatever. That's not what industry's looking for. Because if they can your project, what are you going to do now?
So my question is for Carmen. I see that you did your, like, in your graduate years, you did your research in basic biology. And now you are more into sales and business development. So how you did make this switch or transition?
So when I interviewed so I took a lab position because I knew that that was a good first step into industry, and that would be my message, would be, you know, don't be afraid to start out in the lab, and if you're really looking forward to getting out of the lab, hang tight and do it anyway, because that's what I did. And, you know, I told you about this awesome resume I put together. Well, my hiring manager said in my interview, your resume looks like you don't want to be in the lab. It looks like you're trying to position yourself as not a lab person, but you know this is a lab job, right? And I said, well, okay, yeah, I would like to get out of the lab, but, you know, this is where I'm starting. And he said, I'll get you out of the lab in 2 years. And he actually, what he said is, I'll help you get out of the lab in 2 years. And he said, you know, just take advantage of every opportunity that you see. And I did. Anytime it was like, oh, we need somebody to figure that, I'll do it. You know, oh, okay, so I'll do it. You know, and I got a lot of exposure, and I got a lot of experience, and that's actually what happened, is that I was trying to develop a product, and I was told to do the market assessment and try to determine if there was a market for this product and if it was worth investing in. And I worked with all the marketing people, and I was doing all this, and the marketing manager just said, you know what, this position that I've been trying to fill, I think you should do it. And it was amazing. He said, you know, you will come into marketing, you will leave the lab, you'll be on our side now. And it was amazing because, like I said, I had been very transparent that that was what I wanted, and it was always what I wanted. And immediately, my first thought was, leave the lab. And it was funny, but every decision I've ever made in my career path, I always thought I want to leave as many doors open as possible. And I think it was the first time I ever definitively, you know, slammed the door. And it was, you know, my husband was like, what are you thinking? Like, this is what you want, you know? And I was like, I don't know, how do you think about it? You know? And you know, and that's hard. And it's, you know, closing a door is hard, and you're going to have to do it at some point. And I did it, and it's worked out really well. And they, you know, the head of marketing and his boss, which is now my boss, had, you know, they both talked to me and said, you know, we know you don't have business training, but you know the science. We can teach you the business. We can't teach the business people the science. You know, we know you're smart because you're a scientist, so it's okay. And And I've been, you know, and it's been really good, and I've really, you know, our accountant has worked with me to help me understand the financial stuff. Our lawyer has worked with me to help me understand our contracts. Our head of quality has helped me understand the regulations, and I've reached out to those people, and I've been very transparent with them and said, listen, you know, I need help here. You know, you're asking me to look at this financial sheet and make it better, and I don't understand what it's telling me. And they've been really good about it. And in our contract negotiations, I've actually gotten to the point where I'm actually initiating negotiation now, but I didn't initially because I didn't know what I was doing. And the lawyer actually, after my first big contract came through last year, my lawyer actually sent me a really nice email and said, I really appreciate how you've asked me questions afterwards, not in front of the customer, you know, and, you know, and that you know, I really appreciate everything you've done, and I'm happy to work with you because you seem so interested. And his investment in me has paid off because now I know what he wants in the contract, and I think it's, you know, I think that it's just worked that way. I'm sorry to take up any more, but I just want to say also that last year our company went through a major reorganization and things seemed a little unclear at Lonza. And right at that time that things were a little scary, a recruiter reached out to me for a director of business development. And I'd been only a business development manager for 2 months, but I applied for it because I was scared. And it actually elevated all the way up to the CEO of that company who wanted to talk to me. And the CEO asked me, you know, what is your concern about coming into this position? And I said the same thing. I don't have business experience. And he laughed. He said, don't you see that you're smart and you're a scientist? Like that's not a problem for me. Which it was like astounding to me, you know, and I still feel insecure in some of the discussions that I'm in, but I just keep trying to learn and feel confident that I'll be able to get there.
I'm so curious to see both of your CVs because 10 page long.
I think you're getting at, so when I'm just listening to you, not have ever met before, I think there's a difference though between scientific skills, business skills, and soft skills. And I think, yeah, you can teach people how to read a finance balance sheet, but the soft skills, I don't think most companies want to have to teach people the soft skills. They want to hire people with the soft skills. And I think that often is the distinguishing factor when hiring scientists in industry is really, do you have any soft skills? Can you even hold a conversation? Like, no, I mean, we might be a small nonprofit, but I have 2 PhDs on staff and an MD, and I can tell you that they have soft skills. They understand how to lead. They understand how to communicate. And I think, again, like that's very different than, yeah, I can teach anyone how to read a balance sheet. That, yeah, if you know, use MATLAB, using Excel is generally pretty straightforward. You can be taught how to use a pivot table, but can you be taught how to hold your questions until after a meeting? Like, that's a soft skill that's hard to teach, and most employers don't want to spend time having to teach it.
I think that's a great point, to actually hear everybody kind of talk about how important it is to collaborate. To me, that's a no-brainer. That wouldn't have even entered my mind in terms of a recommendation. It's just, you know, it's one of the things that you take for granted. But I mean, I love just his points. One, I just want to make very quickly too. Another, you know, it's a reason that you may look at a larger company if you are thinking about going into industry is that opportunity for horizontal, you know, movements. I mean, I got jobs. I haven't been in a corporate job in a long time, but I would have never been hired, you know, externally into a role that within 6 to 12 months of being in a company hadn't had an opportunity to meet folks, to, you know, build your internal network and prove that you can do, you know, what you're capable of doing. Opportunities abound. So even if you think you know exactly what you want to be when you grow up, and you know you take a job, that doesn't kind of excuse you from maintaining that same kind of curiosity and kind of big picture. You know, anybody who's that's what I kind of talked about. If you come into an interview and you haven't even really demonstrated that you're really interested in learning more about what the company is and what we're trying to do, odds are that you're probably not thinking strategically enough. But the soft skills, yeah, that's probably the number one issue. You know, you always joke about, I never want to be the smartest guy in the room, and typically, and certainly I'm not. I think I'm probably on the opposite end here. But when you act like you are the smartest person in the room, that's where, you know, I think the academic stereotype comes out a lot of times in the industry. So I think getting becoming humble, and I think everybody on this panel that I've heard, I hear humility, I hear humbleness, I hear sense of humor, I hear the soft skills coming out, and that's what makes you successful in business.
I'd like to bring up a question, kind of shift topics a little bit, and then we can definitely come back. We'll have room for questions at the end. Because I kind of want to talk about either through your experiences or even people you know, the application process and how to start from leaving graduate school to get into that motion. I've heard personally from people say that, especially at big companies, when they post jobs on their website, those have already been filled and they're putting it on just to put it on. And it may not be true, it may be true, and if you guys can bring up that, how did you use your network, how did you use the internet, how did you use your local, like in your school, your career development office, how did you use all these resources to get the job that you had that you wanted, or people that you know? You guys can comment on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I already a little bit
Yeah,
answered.
so let me talk about that process for a little bit. So I think informational interviews are your best friend, okay? Like talking to people and reaching out to your network just to talk to companies. I mean, I was very lucky at Lonza. I emailed some people that worked on a product that we work on in the lab, and they're like, oh, we're getting that manufactured by Lonza, you gotta talk to this guy. So then Justin passed my CV to this other guy, and ultimately I ended up talking with somebody there, just what the field was doing. Was I marketable? Where was going, not asking them for a job, just talking about what's happening in the field. And whenever you apply for a job, you better know what's happening in the field. You better have an idea. Lonza is about to manufacture a whole bunch of this drug for a phase 3 because it's coming from your institution, from your floor. You know what I mean? You should know that type of stuff. Not that it needs to be super detailed, but like you better have an idea of what they do. And I did that both with Lonza and then that transitioned into MedImmune, which I ultimately basically did an informational interview for just some stuff at MedImmune, and then they were like, you should consider this postdoc. And then I kind of worked on the postdoc, and they said, hey, you should apply for the Scientist 1 position. And that's how I fell into it, right? And that only happens not if you're just reading websites, clicking and submitting your CVs. It happens because you're talking to real people that when they browse, somebody's randomly like, oh, that Nick Durham guy, I talked to him, just the other day. And he just, he was excited. Whatever, hopefully the positive things we said about him. Because I assumed that they were like, that guy's annoying. Wow.
I'm sure he was energetic. I thought I was hyper until I got him.
Yeah. So I just think that for me, that's how I did it. I think that probably everything that they're saying is I agree with completely, but that was my perspective on what I did.
I just add and actually agree with it. You don't apply for jobs. It's all about networking. It really is. I mean, there may there will be an application process, but 80 to 90% of the jobs are what they call the hidden job market. Right? It's person to person. I mean that's kind of been where I've spent most of my time the last 12 years is kind of the social networking space. So it's kind of near and dear to my heart. But the reality is that's where the opportunities come from. And that's why it's so important. And there's a saying, if you ask for a job, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get a job. And that's the kind of thing you have to, Nick's point about informational interviews. It's just being curious. It's just asking, you have to start looking for a job before you need one, right? The key to networking is about, kind of building karma so that you can tap it when, it's time. It's not, there are certain people in my network, when I hear from them, I know it's because they need something or want something from me, right? And that's not the way that you should think about it. So I would highly encourage anyone, even if you think you're not sure whether or not industry is right, learn as much as you can about it and become known. Start to build that connection to those networks because that's where you'll start to get offers, and it's nice to have the option of entertaining an offer.
I would say, for me, ironically, I ended up getting a job that I never applied for. And I like to tell that story, and it's true. When Wyeth picked me up for contraception, it is because I had applied to a company called what that was called the Genetics Institute in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I didn't know that it was owned by Wyeth. So Wyeth, doing a search for a position in contraception, pulled my resume out of a database that had been set up through the Genetics Institute. And on my resume, I had things that nobody would ever think to put on a resume. Sperm egg binding, sperm donor assays, all the stuff for my PhD that I had done. they were looking for somebody for contraception. So I jumped out at them. And one day I'm literally a postdoc in the lab and I get a phone call and I pick it up and I said, hello, and he said, yeah, hello, this is Scotland Dean from Wyeth. I don't even know what Wyeth is. I almost hung up on him because I'm like, I was having a bad day. I don't want somebody asking me to buy something. And I almost hung up on him. And then the next thing I know, I went and did, I was on an airplane, 10 days later doing a job interview, and it was the job description was me. You couldn't do any better. But I tell people that apply broadly, make sure you get your keywords in there, because you guys know this, you're always scanned, they're scanning resumes. When I got laid off seriously the first time in 2010, I was in that more, I had 10 years of experience, so recruiters were starting to come into play, and for a lot of you guys, recruiters may not play, they might have, Nick, you're in he's in a great space, so I would be surprised if a recruiter was going after him, but the more connections I had on LinkedIn, the more recruiters were calling. I started at like 180 when I got laid off. I had like 800 by the time I was done. But as I watched that go up, I was getting more and more cold calls from recruiters because I was getting picked up by the LinkedIn visibility. So my recommendations are LinkedIn, do it well, do it very well. When you apply broadly. And make sure your skill sets are in there because somebody is probably going to be doing a computer search to pull your resume.
The other thing is, I don't know, if I were sitting where you're sitting, I'd be like, well, where do I find someone to do an informational interview with, or where do I even start? So the only thing I would say to that, for me, the parallel is fundraising. We don't have a product we sell, I have to just convince people to give us money. Very similar thing, if you want money, ask for advice, don't ask for money. So you have a network, you probably just don't realize it. So the first thing I would do is just sit down and make a list of anyone you know. It doesn't need to be an industry, so don't think you're going to get right to whoever the person you're looking for. It might be 5 meetings away, so there is like a very concrete, like diligent process to follow in building a network and figuring out how to utilize your existing network. So figure out, like, if you know one person, the only person you know is your PI, start there and just ask him, like, is there anyone you know who works at so-and-so? Or, just, and what you'll find is, like, piece by piece, you'll land where you need to land, but you just have to start somewhere and not expect that you're gonna, like, jump all the way to, like, the president of whatever company you're wanting to be hired by. Like, just start somewhere, just get started, like, call somebody, like, meet with somebody, like, it'll start to build, and probably a lot faster than you think, but you know somebody, you just don't know you know somebody. Start with some grad student who used to be in your lab. I mean, just anything, just start talking to people.
I think another thing I forgot to mention too, I think it's less common now because the economy is worse, but we had a postdoc program with about 20 to 25 postdocs. And if you ask me what was my favorite thing, well, probably my second favorite now, but it was having a postdoc when I was in industry. I loved it. And he was phenomenal. When he came in the door, he was already phenomenal. And it was great to mentor him, and basically you just showed him and you taught him drug discovery. You took him everywhere. You take him to Cambridge and show him the NMRs, and you show him the high throughput screening lab. But if you're interested in industry, look and see if there are still postdoctoral programs going, and go for it. You guys all are at a great institution. You have this great card in your pocket already, and use that. And if you think you want to go to industry, look for academic postdocs. And they're usually short. Ours is 2 years max. You're usually done in 2 years. It's not a huge time commitment, and you can maybe really get to see industry. And some places will hire their postdocs. We didn't, which I thought was a great thing, but because you have to go somewhere else, and just make sure that they don't inhibit your ability to publish.
If there isn't a formal postdoc established program, how about setting it up ad hoc? Can you just approach a company and ask them if they would do that?
So yes, you can, because I did it at Lonza, actually. So I was like, hey, how are you doing it? And we basically started the procedure to funding it, right? But that's the downside, right? So if you do want to take that path, ultimately, the money's got to come from somewhere. So either you need to do one of 2 things. You have to convince Lonza that it's in their best interest to fund it, or you need to go and get external funding to fund it at Lonza. And that became a challenge for me, which then shifted my, also my skill set was probably better set where I ultimately ended up. But I am still, the time and energy of doing that for that position was invaluable in what I then, got out of the next interviews and the next process.
I'd also add something, actually, Sarah, and yeah, hit on it as far as the network. Don't assume that your network is like just tied to who you know, what you're doing present day. Like all of you, I assume, came through some undergraduate institutions, and remember the folks that used to sit in the back and came in late? A lot of those folks are actually out in industry and probably VPs of finance and sales and business development. So I know this. The very first check when I started my first company back in 2000, the very first check came from somebody that a good friend of mine from when we were 18 and in college together, and he's a hedge fund, as a hedge fund, and it just never even occurred to me that this was a target. He was my very first investor, and the reason he invested in me was because he knew me for so long. But it never even occurred to me that it was this somebody that had known this long was in a position to actually help, and that's true for all of you. I guarantee it. So don't discount, especially that's again you need to kind of break out of just thinking about your particular the science or the particular industry. Expand those horizons, and that network effect works really well. So I would encourage you. I mean, you all have much larger networks than you realize.
Can I just add one quick shameless plug for Baltimore? So one of the other things is, yes, it is Baltimore. So how many people in here are from Baltimore?
No.
Okay. All right, excellent. So here's the thing. The thing I have learned since finishing 4 years ago is that there are a ton of, no one told me this after undergrad, so I was a Hopkins undergrad, I finished grad. No one told me that there are 1 million biotech companies looking for you in this city, specifically in this city. Like when I interact with the Greater Baltimore Committee, when I interact with the mayor, or they are looking for you. They don't want you to leave Baltimore. They don't know exactly where to find you, but they are looking for you. Like they want you to stay here. And people ask me all the time, they're like, when they hear what my degree was in, they go, oh, do you know where we could find, because they spend so much money recruiting from outside of, I'm not even kidding you, the banks do it here. I could go on and on about this, but please look at Baltimore. It's, if you like Baltimore, even if you don't like Baltimore.
It's nicer when you have a job.
It's nicer, and it's, but it really, it's 600,000 people. When you're talking about networking, it's a very, very small group of people who basically hold the jobs here. It's not, California. So if you're interested in staying, there's a lot of people and companies that are trying to find you and try to network within this area.
Yeah, I mean, helpful hint, I would expect to get about 60 LinkedIn requests after today. I'm seriously, and that's how it starts.
Okay, I have a question. Since now the modern society, not everyone has the personal connection. So which the website you can suggest to us is very useful to looking for a related job like a Baltimore.
I should say that I've never gotten a job from my connections. I mean, they do say that. It's never worked that way really for me. Indeed.com is a good place. That's a good one. And most states have a biotech site. Biospace.com for your state. Pennsylvania has one. When I started my hunting from Washington State, I was looking at Boston because that's where I'm from. So Biospace Boston had a whole bunch of listings, and I found the Genetics Institute. They had a developmental biologist. I applied. They never called, but Wyatt did. So Biospace.com. Indeed.com is a pretty good search engine, and look for the local, there's not big pharma, right, really in this area, and so look for a biotech, Maryland biotech page or something like that.
Indeed is how I found the MedMe job. So,
So can I add something? So we actually have several booklets from Maryland Center, and if you want, there are still some left in the box here in the back. And they actually reference all of the tech companies in Canada.
If you had a couple questions.
Yeah, I had a question about how to strategically pick the postdoc that you go into positions for industry. So it sounds like for both Jeff and Nick, you have a very specific skill set that helps you get your industry job. And if you're doing a postdoc with the intent of ending up in industry, do you pick something very specific skills that you're going to gain during the postdoc? Let's say I'm interested in biologics, and that a lot of that doesn't happen so much in academia. What kind of postdoc would you recommend going after?
So I would say be honest. when you're talking about potential postdocs, and tell them, I'm looking to go to industry later, I'm hoping to do this, to broaden your research, but to also help my, improve my skill set to be more attractive to industry. So I thought it was funny. I've never heard the term, looking for a job, ask for advice, vice versa, because that's what happened is I actually, for my second postdoc, I actually encountered someone I had collaborated with in my PhD, and he had spun out a biotech company. So I went to him asking for advice. Do you think my 1 year at NIH is enough experience to go into industry? And the ultimate thing was, no, come in my lab. And so, so I wasn't looking for a job, and that's what happened. But he said, and I told him, and he knew right away, I'm looking for industry. I'm angling myself for industry. And he said, oh, let's set up some drug screening. I had some drug screening projects I was thinking about. If that is at all interesting to you, I think that would be really helpful. That was one of the first questions I was asked in my interview. Have you ever done drug screenings? Which is funny because that's not even really particularly relevant to anything I ever did at Lonza, but that's something I was asked. And I just think, just be honest. I think that there's a fear that there's that black, you're going to the dark side. You don't want to tell people in academia you're thinking about it. You didn't tell anybody where you are right now. You told them that, you're in the tissue culture room, because you don't want them to know you're contemplating a career in industry. But it's okay. I mean, I think especially nowadays, people realize that chances are you're not going to find a job in academia, and it's okay. And there's so much out there, and just be honest. Just say, this is where I want to go.
Before or after you get an offer? After they give you a postdoctoral offer, then you can start bringing things up, and you can tell them on your interview.
Tell them on your interview. I think be honest. It'll make your experience more successful. If they're going to put you down in the animal facility the entire time because that's the project they need you to do, that may or may not help you get the skills you need, and you're never going to be happy. And you're never going to get where you want to be. You're not going to get the most out of the experience. It's not worth it, I would say.
I didn't do my postdoc for the industry experience, but it was there. It showed up right around the time I showed up, so it was just a nice serendipitous occurrence. But if I were thinking I wanted to do it, when I went to meetings, big scientific meetings, I would talk to some of the the leaders in your field and say, is anybody associated with industry? And that's where you would go. Then you're in academics, but you may get the visits and you may get projects that are associated with pharma that at least give you a taste. I knew the minute I went to Zymo Genetics, I'm like, this is it. This is where I need to be because I'm very comfortable here. I understand exactly what I'm doing. So I was lucky that I ran into it, but that doesn't mean you can't go find a postdoc who has 1 or 2 projects that are associated with industry. I'm sure you guys must have had a bunch. That's an incredibly hot field.
Yeah, I think if you want to go into biologics, right, the field is growing now, right? We see Emerald ads every day, right? Biologics is there. Biologics is growing, and it's a huge growth field. Do it, be successful, be marketable in the field that you want to go into. You want to work in biologics and allergy, go there. I'm sure someone's doing it. I was lucky. I'll be totally honest. The only reason I think I got the thing that I'm doing right now is because I did tumor immunology with checkpoint blockade. That's what we're doing, you know what I mean? So that helped a lot. The only other thing that I'll say is, if you can find somebody else in the field to give you a little bit of advice before you go, that was immensely helpful for me. A postdoc that traveled through my lab works at BMS doing very similar things to what I'm doing. And I got the MedImmune interview and I was super scared and I just sent him an email and I was like, man, I got this interview. And he sent me back 3 sentences. He's like, congratulations, this is what you should do, best of luck to you. And the sentence in the middle was the most important, right? Joe Grosso was like, this is your talk that you're used to giving in science. And in the middle of it, he was like, this is how you need to tweak it a little bit for industry. And that was immensely wonderful to me because I think it made the talk that I gave flow like a conversation, which in the end was, I'm sure, what helped me get that job. Because the talk that you give here is not the talk that they want to hear. So I guess that's what I would say. I agree with everything that they said, just kind of making sure that you're getting that experience that shapes you to explain why you want to be in the industry, why you're going to be successful there, and how you understand that you have the soft skills to be successful there.
I think what Nick did is when he got the interview, he called somebody he knew that was in industry. Right? When I got my offer, I didn't know what to do with an offer from industry. Do I negotiate it? What are stock options? I don't know what these things even are. And I called the guy who was a very helpful postdoc to me when I was a first-year graduate student who was at Monsanto. I said, Bill, I got an offer here. I don't even know what this stuff means. And he was great. So you should be, you have a network, even if you don't realize it. But when you have something, don't walk into an industry interview blind or cold. If you know somebody who's in industry, say, are there any things I should stress in my talk, or the things I should say, or the things I shouldn't say? And and if you get an offer, you should find somebody who's in industry and talk to them about it and see if it's a good offer or ways to improve it.
And I don't believe anybody if they tell us our network is too small for that here at Hopkins. That's just like, your network is gigantic. Even if you ask me, I could reference, people. Your network is as far as you're willing to ask the people around you. I mean, I was immensely lucky. The labs next to me, I went up to some MDs. I was interested in consulting. Maybe some of you guys were, before. And, I just asked some people and they said, hey, here, I know 2 principals, I know this person, and I ended up talking to 5 people in informational interviews and consulting, right? That's how you start it. You just have to be willing to do that. And just be honest with people, hey, do you have 10 minutes to talk about what you do? Just have some questions. This isn't like 30 minutes, an hour. You just want 10 minutes to talk with people and get feedback, because you do that 5 times, you're going to be more confident, you're going to know what's going on in the field, and when you get there to have the conversation, when your interview comes up, you're going to do well.
I know we're running out of time. There's one point I was driving down here today, and this is where somebody would say, well, maybe he made a mistake. And so I was at Washington State, and I'm in one of the best labs in my field. I went to Griswold, right? It doesn't get any better than that. So, and I get an interview in Boston, which ended up falling through. But I tell my wife or my fiance, whatever she was at the time, I said, apply to Boston. We're going to Boston because I got an interview. And she applies, and boom, Millennium hammers her, bang. In a week, Millennium's flying her out there. And she's a master's level, so she had her master's she used to work in the Ross Building. And when the guys at Millennium were talking to her about her husband and how and why she's coming out, they said to him, they're like, why did he go to Washington State? I was offended, right? Because this guy's a monster in the field, But literally, it's not only who you do your postdoc with, and that's what I always figured what was going to be important, but where you do your postdoc counts. The fact that I have Hopkins on my pedigree and I have a degree always stays with me. It's always a positive. And the fact that you postdoc here is going to help you going out. The first day I had lunch with my postdoc advisor. He plays basketball every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'm meeting all these senior level National Academy members at Washington State. And he sat down and, and he didn't introduce me as Dan Johnston, his new postdoc. He introduced me as Dan Johnston, his new postdoc from Hopkins. And it was a subtle difference, but I caught it, meaning your Hopkins will always stay with you. People will always, at some level, it'll give you an advantage, and just appreciate that. And maybe appreciate the fact that you're doing your postdoc, or if you go on to do a postdoc, the institution may matter to industry more than it does in academia. Because in academia, the fact that I was in Griswold's lab would have been fine no matter where I went, no matter where I interviewed. But industry may not know these people if they see something in your resume.
Thank you guys so much for talking to me.